Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The sea winds howled over Dragonstone, cold and sharp as the teeth of a wolf. The island was a grim and smoking place, born of fire and shadow, where black cliffs plunged into stormy waters, and the great stone dragons that crowned the castle's towers seemed almost alive in the rain. It was here that Aegon Targaryen, last scion of old Valyria's dragon lords, stood gazing westward from the battlements. He had done so many times before, watched the clouds drift over the narrow sea, watched the mists hide the distant shores of Westeros. But this day was different. The sky itself seemed restless. Storm clouds bruised the heavens, and a wind full of salt and omen tore at Aegon's long silver hair. Behind him, his sister Visenya approached, her step sure, her cloak whipping in the gale. She was older than Aegon by a few years, her eyes hard as tempered steel. "The sea is angry," she said, "and so are the lords of Westeros." Aegon turned, his face calm. They war amongst themselves. They always have. Visenya's hand came to rest on the pommel of her sword. Dark sister, the Valyrian steel blade she carried with as much ease as breath. "Then they are weak," she said, "and weakness invites conquest." A crack of thunder rolled across the island, followed by the faint echo of collapsing stone. The wind brought with it the scent of smoke, not from the mountain's fires, but from something nearer. Below, in the harbor, ships were breaking against the rocks. The storm was tearing Dragonstone apart. It was Rhaenys, the younger of Aegon's two sisters, who came running through the rain, her laughter bright despite the chaos. She was as unlike Visenya as dawn is from dusk, all warmth and wild joy, with eyes that danced like flame. "The gods themselves urge us west," she cried, pointing toward the sea where lightning forked across the horizon. The storm raged 3 days and 3 nights. When it broke, much of the harbor was gone, and a dozen small folk had been lost to the waves. Yet Aegon's mind was not upon ruin. As he stood beside the black sands where the waves hissed and withdrew, he felt a stirring deep within him. Not fear, not grief, but purpose. He had dreamed of dragons, great shadows flying over a land of many crowns. He had dreamed of a single throne of iron, forged in fire, and in his dream, he had seen himself seated upon it. So when the storm had passed and the skies cleared, Aegon gathered his sisters and his sworn men in the hall of Dragonstone. The great black walls glowed red from the torches, and the air shimmered with the heat of the nearby volcano. The smell of ash and salt hung thick as he spoke. "Westeros is divided," he said, his voice carrying over the hall. 7 kings rule where one should. Their wars have burned the land and bled their people dry. It is time for that to end. A murmur rose among his bannermen. None dared speak against him, though some exchanged uneasy glances. The realm across the sea was vast and full of fierce men. The Starks of the north, the Lannisters of the west, the Gardeners, the Arryns, the Martells, the Tullys, and proud Argilac Durrandon, king of Storm's End. Yet Aegon's gaze was steady. "We will not wait for them to come to us," he said. "We will go to them." Visenya's lips curved into a grim smile. "And when they kneel, they will kneel to a dragon." Rhaenys's eyes gleamed. "Or burn." In the days that followed, Dragonstone stirred with feverish purpose. Blacksmiths worked through the night forging mail and blades. The harbor was filled with carpenters repairing what ships the storm had spared. Messengers rode through the villages, calling for men to take up arms for their lord. From the mountain's depths came the beating of wings, the sound of dragons awakening. Aegon descended to the dragon pit, a cavern vast and lit by the red glow of molten rock. There, amidst the smoke and heat, waited Balerion the Black Dread, his wings folded like the sails of a great ship, his eyes burning with molten fire. His scales were black as midnight, his size terrible to behold. When Aegon laid a hand upon the beast's snout, the dragon rumbled deep in its chest, a sound that made the very stones tremble. Visenya stood beside Vagar, smaller but still mighty, her green eyes gleaming like emeralds in the dark. Rhaenys soothed Meraxes, the silver-scaled she-dragon who snorted smoke as her rider approached. "Fire and blood," Visenya murmured. "Fire and blood," Aegon echoed. The next dawn, the people of Dragonstone gathered on the cliffs to watch their lord depart. 3 dragons rose into the sky, their wings beating thunder into the clouds. Below them sailed Aegon's fleet, barely 3,000 men and a handful of ships. It was not an army of numbers, but of destiny. They crossed the narrow sea under clear skies. The air was full of salt and promise. Ahead lay the shores of Westeros, green and golden beneath the morning sun. As they neared landfall, Rhaenys flew low, laughing aloud as Meraxes swept over the coastline. "This is it," she called to her brother above the roar of wind. "A new world." Aegon looked down upon the mouth of the river where they would land, a wide sweep of mudflats and forests, guarded by no castle, claimed by no king. Here he saw the beginning of his dream, not of conquest alone, but of creation. "We will build here," he said. "This shall be our foothold." He named the place Aegon Fort. That night, as the fires of their first camp burned along the river bank, Aegon stood once more beneath the stars. The flames flickered on his face, and the dragons roared somewhere beyond the trees. 7 crowns glittered in his mind, and one by one he saw them fall. His conquest had begun. The dawn that followed their landing was pale and mist-laden, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and river reeds. Seabirds wheeled over the tide, crying above the dark hulls of Aegon's ships drawn up upon the muddy shore. Men moved among them, soldiers, craftsmen, and sailors, weary from the crossing yet alive with restless purpose. Fires crackled along the banks of the Blackwater Rush, and the smoke rose straight and gray into the sky. Aegon stood upon a rise overlooking the encampment, his black cloak stirring in the morning breeze. Around him gathered his closest companions, Visenya, stern and unyielding, Rhaenys, bright-eyed and eager, and a small knot of captains sworn to his cause. Among them was Orys Baratheon, Aegon's half-brother by some whispers, a broad-shouldered warrior whose loyalty burned as fierce as any flame. "This place has no name upon the maps," Orys said, scanning the river mouth. "No lord claims it." "Then we claim it," Aegon replied. His tone was quiet, but his words carried weight. "Here we plant our first roots." The work began at once. Timber was felled from the nearby forests, and a wooden fort rose upon the hill, rough, quick-built, but strong. They called it Aegon Fort, and from its towers, banners of black and red unfurled into the wind. The 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen, breathing fire. From the high parapets, Aegon could see far, the glitter of the sea behind them, and inland, the green sweep of the riverlands. He knew that word of his arrival would soon spread like wildfire. 7 kings ruled these lands, and none would welcome an invader with dragons at his back. The first to act was Harrenhal, king of the Isles and the rivers, whose vast and terrible castle of Harrenhal loomed over the god's eye like a monument to pride. Harren the Black, men called him, a man who had enslaved thousands to raise his mighty fortress of stone. When he heard of Aegon's landing, he laughed. "Let this foreign lord come," he said, seated upon his iron chair. "My walls are strong, my armies vast, no dragon can breach Harrenhal." So Aegon sent him a raven, sealed with black wax and bearing the mark of the dragon. Its message was simple: bend the knee or be burned. Harren's reply came swift and scornful: "Come and see your doom." When the raven returned, Aegon looked to his sisters. "Then we shall go," he said. The march inland began beneath a sky the color of smoke. Aegon's host moved along the riverbanks, the dragons circling high above like living shadows. Villages watched them pass in fearful awe. Some fled, some knelt. Wherever Aegon's banner rose, he offered the same choice to every lord and town: submit and keep your lands, or resist and face the fire. Most chose wisely, but the lords sworn to Harrenhal gathered their men and swore vengeance upon the invaders. Their spears glinted in the fields, and their banners, the black kraken of the Iron Islands, streamed in the wind. Aegon halted his army within sight of the towers of Harrenhal. The castle was monstrous, its walls black and thick as mountains, its towers piercing the clouds. "He believes himself safe," Visenya murmured beside him. "No wall is safe from dragonflame," said Rhaenys softly. Night fell heavy upon the lake, and the wind turned hot. The people within Harrenhal watched from their towers as strange shapes passed across the moon, vast wings blotting out the stars. Then came the roar. Balerion, the Black Dread, descended first, his wings spreading wider than the courtyard itself, his jaws opening to pour forth rivers of black fire. The stone walls glowed red, then white. Screams echoed from within the towers as iron melted and stone ran like wax. Meraxes and Vhagar joined the assault, their fire converging upon the great hall where Harren and his sons took refuge. When dawn came, Harrenhal was a ruin of twisted towers and molten gates. The great walls stood, but they wept with heat. Aegon entered through the ashes, his cloak untouched by soot, and found Harren's throne room blackened and broken. The king of the Isles lay dead upon his own seat, his crown melted to his skull. Aegon stood before him for a long while, saying nothing. Then he turned to his men. "Let the realm look upon this, and remember," he said, "stone cannot withstand fire." Word of the burning spread faster than the flames themselves. Some kingdoms trembled, others raged. In the Stormlands, King Argilac Durrandon, last of the Storm Kings, called his bannermen. Proud and valiant, Argilac had already defied Aegon once when the Targaryen lord had offered him alliance through marriage. Orys Baratheon, to wed Argilac's daughter in exchange for peace. Argilac's answer had been to send Aegon a pair of severed hands. Now the old king swore that he would drive the Dragon Lord back into the sea. While Aegon secured the Riverlands and placed loyal lords in command, Argilac's army gathered upon the rolling plains south of the Blackwater. The banners of the storm swirled, blue and gold, the crowned stag upon them. Aegon's scouts returned with news of their numbers, near 4,000 men to his 2. Orys Baratheon grinned when he heard it. "Then we'll not want for glory." "Glory will not win the day," Aegon said. "Fire will." The two hosts met upon a field of long grass and red clay. Thunder rolled above, and a storm broke, as if the gods themselves watched with interest. The ground turned to mud beneath the horses' hooves, rain lashing down in sheets. Argilac led the charge himself, his white beard soaked, his sword flashing like lightning. His knights crashed through Aegon's front lines, and for a time it seemed the Storm King might carry the day. Then came the dragons. From the clouds above, Balerion roared, and the downpour turned to steam. Argilac's men faltered, blinded by the sudden fog and fire. When the dragon's shadow fell over them, courage fled. Still, Argilac would not yield. He fought until his last breath, striking down Orys's horse before being thrown to the ground. The two men faced each other amid the storm. Argilac raised his sword with both hands. Orys, drenched and bleeding, drove his own blade through the old king's chest. When the rain finally ceased, the field was strewn with blackened corpses and smoking steel. The Storm King was dead, his line broken. Aegon took no joy in the victory. He buried Argilac with honor and saw that his daughter was spared. He named Orys Baratheon Lord of Storm's End and gave him Argilac's sword and sigil, the crowned stag upon a field of gold. Thus was born House Baratheon, first of Aegon's great vassals. From the ashes of war, a new order began to rise. Yet Aegon knew this was only the beginning. The dragons had conquered the storm and the river, but 5 crowns yet remained. And far to the west, the Lion of Casterly Rock was stirring. The conquest had truly begun. The flames of the Stormlands had scarcely cooled when Aegon turned his eyes westward. The wind off the sea carried the scent of ash and salt, and in the night the dragons slept coiled around their fires, their wings stirring the air like banners. Yet Aegon himself did not rest. He walked alone upon the ramparts of Aegonfort, his gaze fixed upon the dark horizon. The land he had claimed was secure, for now. The river lords had bent the knee after Harrenhal's fall, and the Stormlands had yielded with Argilac's death. Yet beyond them, 5 crowns still glittered, each one waiting to be seized or burned away. The next challenge came from the west, where the Lannisters of Casterly Rock and the Gardeners of Highgarden ruled in uneasy alliance. Word of Aegon's victories had reached them both, and though many men whispered that dragons could not be fought, King Loren Lannister and King Mern Nine Gardner were not cowards. They gathered their hosts upon the plains of the Reach, a force so great that even Aegon's captains blanched to hear it numbered more than 50,000 strong. The might of the West and South together, Orys Baratheon said grimly when the reports came. They will crush us with sheer numbers. Aegon's eyes burned like coals beneath his helm. Numbers cannot kill dragons, he said. Still, he knew the danger. He had perhaps 12,000 men, seasoned, loyal, but few beside the armies of 2 kings. Only the dragons gave him the edge, and even they could not be everywhere at once. When the news reached his sisters, Rhaenys smiled as if the thought of battle delighted her. "Then let us fly above them," she said. "Let them see what it means to face the blood of old Valyria." Visenya, by contrast, merely tightened her gauntlet straps. "Let them see," she agreed, "and let them burn." The armies met upon a vast field of tall, dry grass near the Blackwater's upper reaches, a plain that would forever be known as the Field of Fire. The day was hot, the air shimmering. The hosts of the Lannisters and Gardeners stretched as far as the eye could see, banners rippling, golden lions and green roses gleaming beneath the sun. Drums beat like thunder. The ground trembled with the march of thousands of armored men. From a hilltop at the center of his own lines, Aegon watched the enemy array themselves. He turned to his sisters and nodded once. "Now," he said. With a roar that shook the heavens, the dragons took flight. Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes soared high, their wings blotting out the sun. Below, men craned their necks upward, fear creeping through even the bravest hearts. Arrows darkened the sky, but they fell harmlessly short. Then came the shadow, vast, terrible, and the world turned red. Balerion's fire fell first, sweeping the field in a wave of black flame. The dry grass caught at once, fire racing like a living thing across the plains. Horses screamed, men fled, banners turned to ash. Vhagar and Meraxes descended from either side, their flames joining Balerion's in a storm of death. The wind carried the heat in rolling waves. Armor glowed red, shields melted in men's hands. Whole battalions vanished in an instant, consumed by the inferno. The screams of the dying rose into the sky, drowned only by the dragon's roars. The fire raged for hours. When it ended, the field of fire was a blackened wasteland, strewn with the charred remnants of what had been the greatest host ever assembled in the West. King Mern Gardener of Highgarden was dead, burned with all his sons and heirs. The once proud line of Gardeners was ended in a single day. King Loren Lannister alone survived, his armor scorched and his face blistered, having fled the field before the dragon's fury. He came to Aegon's camp the next morning, barefoot, without sword or crown, and bent the knee. "I saw the might of dragons," he said hoarsely. "No wall of men can stand against fire made flesh. I will serve you, Aegon of House Targaryen." Aegon raised him up with his own hand. "Then rise, Loren of House Lannister," he said. "Lord of Casterly Rock, Warden of the West, and servant of the realm we shall build together." Thus the West was won, and the Reach soon followed. With Mern dead, his steward Harlan Tyrell surrendered Highgarden and pledged fealty to the dragon. Aegon accepted and named him Lord Paramount of the Reach, the first of his line to rule there. By fire and blood, 3 crowns had fallen, but conquest was never easy to end, nor peace quick to come. Beyond the Reach, the Vale, the North, and Dorne remained. From the Eyrie, Queen Shara Arryn sent envoys, offering peace if Aegon would wed her and make her son his heir. But Visenya flew to the Vale instead. When the child king Ronal Arryn saw her dragon Vhagar circle the mountain peaks, he begged his mother to let him fly. Visenya obliged, taking the boy upon the dragon's back. When they returned, the little king declared he would bend the knee. For who would fight dragons when one had soared upon their wings? Thus the Vale yielded without bloodshed. Far in the north, Torrhen Stark, king in winter, marched his host south across the neck, banners snapping in the cold wind. His army was 20,000 strong, proud men of the old blood, fierce and loyal. Yet when he reached the Trident, he found Aegon waiting with dragons overhead and the riverlands at his back. The 2 kings faced each other across the river. Torrhen saw the black wings sweeping above the clouds, the fires burning in the distance where other armies had fallen. He knew that his men would die, everyone, if he stood defiant. That night, he knelt before Aegon and laid his sword at the conqueror's feet. "I will not let my people burn for pride," he said. And from that day forth, he was remembered as Torrhen Stark, the king who knelt. Only Dorne remained. The deserts of the south lay silent and untouched, their lords having neither joined nor challenged the dragon. But Aegon would not suffer any corner of Westeros to remain apart. With Rhaenys and Meraxes, he rode into the burning sands, determined to bring the 7th kingdom to heel. Yet Dorne was unlike any land he had faced. Its people did not meet him in battle. They vanished into the hills and deserts, leaving only empty keeps and abandoned towns. His host marched for weeks beneath the sun, fighting heat and thirst instead of armies. At last, they reached Sunspear, seat of House Martell, but found its gates open and its halls deserted. Upon the throne, sat only a scrolled parchment bearing a single message in a woman's hand. You may burn our castles, but you cannot rule the sands. You may conquer us, but you will never hold us. This is Dorne, and we will not kneel. It was signed Princess Maria Martell, the aged ruler of Dorne. Rhaenys burned with fury and wished to scour the land in fire, but Aegon forbade it. We came to build a kingdom, he said, not a graveyard. And so he withdrew, leaving Dorne unconquered, the one realm that defied the dragon's flame. When he returned to Aegonfort, the lords of 6 kingdoms awaited him. The High Septon himself had come from Old Town to anoint him with the 7 oils. Upon a hill overlooking the mouth of the Blackwater, beneath the open sky, Aegon Targaryen was crowned Aegon of House Targaryen, the first of his name, king of all Westeros, lord of the 7 kingdoms, and protector of the realm. His sisters stood beside him, their dragons circling above. The crowd of lords and small folk knelt as one, the air trembling with their shouts of acclaim. Balerion roared, and the sound echoed for miles. So ended the wars of conquest, and so began the rule of the dragons. And from that day, the land of 7 kings became one realm, bound by fire and forged in blood. Peace, hard won and fragile, settled upon the realm like the stillness after a storm. The fires of conquest had dimmed, leaving behind smoke, ashes, and the shape of a new world. Aegon I sat the Iron Throne, a monstrous seat of twisted blades and blackened steel, forged from the swords of his fallen foes by the fire of Balerion the Black Dread. It was not a comfortable throne, nor had it been meant to be. The blades cut and scraped if a king sat carelessly. It was a reminder that the rule of men must be sharp and vigilant, or it would turn upon its master. The hall of Aegonfort had grown from a simple wooden fort into a castle of timber and stone, overlooking the mouth of the Blackwater Rush. The river shimmered in the sunlight, the city below swelling with life. Merchants came by ship and cart, eager to trade with the new royal court. Artisans, smiths, and masons built homes and workshops around the fort until the settlement became a bustling town. They began to call it King's Landing, for it was there that Aegon had first set foot upon Westeros, and there he had begun his reign. Yet though his crown shone bright, the realm beneath it was not at rest. The wounds of war ran deep. In the Reach, burned fields still smoldered. In the Riverlands, villages lay in ruin. The lords of the defeated watched the Dragon King with wary eyes, each wondering how long peace would last and whether the new king would rule as conqueror or as tyrant. Aegon knew this unease well. He sat often in council with his sisters, the 2 queens who shared both his blood and his throne. Visenya, sharp as her sword, dark sister, counseled strength. "The realm bends because it fears us," she said one night, her face half shadowed by the torchlight. "If we grow soft, it will rise again. Keep the dragons close. Let the people remember who rules them." Rhaenys, ever gentler, shook her head. "Fear will hold men for a time, but only love can make them loyal. The people must see a king who listens as well as commands." Aegon sat between them, silent. He understood both truths, and he bore the weight of both. The realm was his to unite, but unity forged in fire must be tempered by justice, lest it shatter. So Aegon began the slow work of building not only a kingdom, but a realm that could endure. He called his lords to him, those who had fought and those who had yielded, and confirmed them in their lands and titles, so long as they swore fealty to the crown. To those who had been loyal from the start, he gave greater honors. Orys Baratheon, his brother by bond if not by blood, was made Hand of the King and Lord of Storm's End. Loren Lannister kept Casterly Rock, Harlan Tyrell ruled Highgarden, and Torrhen Stark remained Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. It was a delicate balance. Too much favor to one might stir envy in another, yet Aegon managed it with quiet skill. He listened to counsel, but made his own decisions, and in doing so, began to weave the first threads of the kingdom's law. Still, rebellion smoldered in hidden corners. In the Riverlands, bandits rose who called themselves the Sons of the Rivers, swearing vengeance for Harrenhal's fall. In the Reach, some knights whispered that Harlan Tyrell was a steward, not a king, and that the true blood of the Gardeners had been stolen. Even in the Stormlands, where Orys Baratheon ruled by right of conquest and marriage, there were lords who muttered that dragons were foreign things, and no true sons of Westeros should bow to them. It was Visenya who first learned of a plot to slay the king. The assassin came by sea, creeping through the growing maze of streets that surrounded Aegonfort. He was a sellsword from Lys, hired with gold from some unseen hand. On the night he came, Aegon was in his solar, unarmed but for a candle. Visenya entered moments before the blade fell. Dark Sister flashed in her hand, quick as thought. The would-be killer fell in 2 strokes, blood spilling across the stone floor. "You must be guarded better," she said coldly, cleaning her blade. "I have dragons," Aegon answered. "Dragons cannot watch your sleep," she replied. From that night, at Visenya's urging, Aegon founded the King's Guard, 7 knights sworn to protect his person and his blood, day and night, at the cost of their lives. They would bear white cloaks and no lands, no wives, no sons, serving only the crown until death. The first of them was Corlys Velaryon, a cousin of Aegon from the proud house of Driftmark, whose ships had carried the Targaryen host to Westeros. 6 others followed, each chosen for valor and loyalty, and thus another pillar of the realm was set in place. While Aegon ruled and Visenya guarded, Rhaenys flew. She loved the open skies more than the stone halls of kings. Often she would take Meraxes and soar above the land, alighting in distant towns and keeps. She listened to the small folk, shared their bread, and brought their words back to her brother. Through her eyes, Aegon began to see the realm not as 7 conquered kingdoms, but as one living body, bound together by the roads, rivers, and hearts of its people. In the 7th year of his reign, Aegon ordered the building of a great sept upon the hill beside his castle, to honor the 7 gods of the faith, and to show the realm that the Dragon King did not stand apart from its faith. The High Septon himself came from Oldtown to bless the stones. Yet beneath the prayers, whispers grew. The faith remembered that Aegon had taken both his sisters to wife, and though such things were not unknown in Valyria, they were an abomination in the eyes of the 7. Priests murmured that the king's blood was cursed, that the dragons were demons born of fire and sin. Aegon heard their words but answered them not. He ruled by strength and by will, not by sermons. The small folk called him Aegon the Dragon, and though they feared him, they also came to trust that under his rule, the peace held. In time, the wooden walls of Aegonfort were replaced by stone. Towers rose higher each year, and black iron gates guarded the river mouth. The small town around it swelled into a great city, crowded and loud but full of life. Fishermen cast their nets from the piers, merchants called out their wares, smiths hammered in the forges from dawn until dark. The smoke of 10,000 hearths curled into the sky, and dragons wheeled above it, their shadows passing over rooftops like omens. From the north to the Reach, from the Vale to the Stormlands, all roads now led to one throne, a throne of iron and fire, upon which a dragon king sat with his sword across his knees and his crown of twisted steel upon his brow. He had won the realm with dragons. Now he would hold it with wisdom and law. And though the embers of rebellion would flicker from time to time, none dared yet to fan them to flame, for as long as Balerion's shadow darkened the skies above King's Landing, Westeros remembered what it meant to bow before the conqueror. Thus began the true reign of Aegon the Targaryen, the first king of a realm forged in blood and bound by fire. Years passed, and the reign of Aegon the Targaryen grew roots deep and strong, though not without thorns. The dragons still ruled the skies, and the Iron Throne still cast its long shadow across the Seven Kingdoms. But beneath the banners of peace, unrest stirred like wind beneath leaves. For a realm forged in fire was not easily kept from flame. The first true test of Aegon's peace came from the faith of the Seven, whose high septon in Old Town had long harbored doubt toward the Dragon King's rule. The holy men whispered that his marriages were sins, that his sisters' children were born of wickedness, that his power was an affront to the gods themselves. Such words carried far, for the faith had roots older than any Targaryen banner, and its reach touched every village and sept in the land. Aegon had expected disquiet, but not rebellion. Yet rebellion came, cloaked in prayers and incense. In the 8th year of his reign, the faith declared that no man who broke the laws of the Seven could claim to rule in their name. In the streets of Old Town and King's Landing, septons preached that the dragons were abominations, beasts sent to test the faithful. Men took up arms beneath the sign of the seven-pointed star and called themselves the Faith Militant, the warriors' sons and the poor fellows. They were not lords nor knights of great houses, but zealots, peasants, beggars, hedge knights, and even minor lords whose hearts burned hotter than their sense. They marched in ragged bands, shouting that the gods themselves would smite the dragon lords. The first blood was spilled in the Reach, where a sept was burned by a patrol of Aegon's soldiers who mistook the faith banners for rebellion. The news spread like wildfire, and within moons, the flames of unrest had leapt from the Mander to the Trident. In council, Aegon's temper burned low, but fierce. They would challenge the will of the crown, he said. The faith serves the gods, not the sword, yet it is the sword that keeps peace among men. Visenya stood beside him, cold as the edge of Dark Sister. Peace bought by mercy will be peace lost to defiance, she warned. The gods have their septs. Let them keep them. But if they take up arms against the crown, they must learn that dragons answer no prayers. Rhaenys, sitting upon a cushioned bench, frowned. The small folk love their septs, brother. Burn one, and they will curse your name. But if the faith seeks to rise, they must be met. The flames of faith burn hotter than any forge, and if left to spread, they will consume the realm. Aegon's eyes, dark as iron, turned to the open window. Beyond it, the city sprawled, smoke and life rising together. Then we will not burn their septs, he said, but neither will we yield our throne. The dragons will not fight the gods. They will protect the peace. Thus began the wars of the Faith Militant. The Faith's armies gathered in the heart of the Reach and the Riverlands, their banners bearing the seven-pointed star upon fields of white. They marched beneath the blessings of septons, armed with swords and prayers, believing that no fire could touch those who carried the gods' favor. Aegon rode out to meet them with his lords and captains, Balerion's great shadow sweeping across the sky. When the two forces met upon the open fields of the Mander, the zealots raised their hands to the heavens and shouted their prayers. But the heavens did not answer. the dragon did. When Balerian's fire fell, the prayers turned to screams. The field burned for a day and a night, and though Aegon wept for the dead, he knew that mercy could not hold a crown. In the years that followed, the faith bent but did not break. The poor fellows roamed the roads, striking at travelers loyal to the king, while the warriors' sons held their fortresses in defiance. Aegon fought them not only with swords, but with patience. He forbade his men to burn septs or slay the unarmed. He sent gold to rebuild villages, sent bread where dragons had flown, and slowly the people began to remember peace again. Through it all, Rhaenys remained his light. Her laughter could still fill a hall, and her heart remained gentle even when her dragon's fire was not. She often flew Meraxes to Dorne, hoping to bring that last proud kingdom into the fold without war. Time and again, she met with Princess Maria Martell, the aged ruler of Sunspear. The Dornish princess was nearly blind, her skin like parchment, yet her voice was steady as stone. "You cannot hold Dorne with swords or fire," she told Rhaenys. "Our people will not kneel, and if you burn our castles, we will vanish into the sand and return with the next wind." Rhaenys smiled as she rose to leave. "Perhaps," she said, "but one day the winds may change." She returned often from her journeys with tales of the desert and its people, the silent cities, the sandstone keeps, the markets filled with spices and song. Aegon listened but did not share her hope. He knew Dorne would bow only in its own time, or never at all. Then, in the 10th year of his reign, tragedy struck. Rhaenys took Meraxes once more into the sky, flying south to Sunspear with only a few companions. None who rode with her returned. What happened is known only by rumor and ash. Some say her dragon was struck by a scorpion bolt from the walls of Hellholt. Others claim she was ambushed in the mountains, or that the sands themselves swallowed her whole. Only Meraxes was seen again, falling from the clouds and crashing into the sands, her silver wings shattered. Her skull was later recovered, but Rhaenys was never found. When word reached King's Landing, Aegon closed himself in the hall of Aegon Fort for 3 days and nights. He neither ate nor spoke. The dragons roared ceaselessly, their cries echoing across the city. Visenya alone dared enter his chambers. When she emerged, her eyes were wet, but her voice was hard. "The king grieves," she told the court, "and when a dragon grieves, the world should tremble." Aegon led the vengeance himself. He and Visenya took to the skies upon Balerion and Vhagar, laying waste to Dorne from sky to sea. Castles burned, fields turned to glass, and whole towns vanished in flame. Yet the Dornish did not yield. Each keep that fell was found empty, each victory hollow. After 2 years of burning and blood, Aegon withdrew his armies. "There is no victory in ashes," he said at last. "Let Dorne keep its sands." He returned to King's Landing, his hair streaked with gray, his heart made heavy by loss. The Iron Throne seemed colder beneath him than ever before. But though sorrow had scarred him, the king did not falter. In his grief, he turned his mind to legacy, to the realm that would outlive dragons and fire both. He decreed the building of roads between the great cities, that trade and justice might move as swiftly as dragons once flew. He commanded scribes to record the laws of the realm, so that kings yet unborn would know the rule of the conqueror. And when he walked among the people, he was no longer greeted as a conqueror, but as Aegon the Dragon King, the man who had made a realm of 7 kingdoms and bound them together not only by fear, but by the hope that peace, once won, might endure. Yet high above the city, upon the black walls of Aegon Fort, the dragons still roared in the night, a reminder that all peace rests upon the edge of fire. The years that followed the death of Queen Rhaenys were heavy with silence. King's Landing had grown into a sprawling city of noise and smoke, yet within the red walls of the new Aegon Fort, grief still lingered like mist after rain. The people had seen their queen ride into the sky and never return, and though time dulled their mourning, it sharpened their awe. The dragons were creatures of flame and storm, but even dragons could fall, and that knowledge cast a strange shadow across the realm. King Aegon himself changed in those years. He was older now, the silver of his hair touched with white, his face carved by sorrow and memory. Yet the fire within him had not dimmed. He still rose before dawn, still sat long upon the iron throne, hearing the pleas of lords and commoners alike. But the laughter that had once warmed the hall was gone. The city grew nonetheless. The smell of fish and smoke hung thick over the Blackwater rush. The cries of hawkers filled the markets, and on every street, the red banners of the dragon waved above the crowd. The Red Keep, as it came to be called, was being built upon Aegon's orders. A fortress grander than any castle before it, its walls meant to last for centuries. Balerion the Black Dread slept beneath it in the deep caverns of the hill, his wings folded like sails, his breath a furnace. Men whispered that his roars could still be heard at night, echoing through the stone foundations. Aegon visited him often, standing before the mountain-sized creature in silence. No man dared to follow him into those depths. It was in the 12th year of his reign that trouble once more stirred. The Riverlands, weary from war and taxes, began to chafe under the rule of Aegon's chosen lord. The small folk had rebuilt their fields, but old rivalries still burned like embers. Bandits preyed upon merchants, and whispers of rebellion reached even the Red Keep. When the king heard the first reports, he did not call for his dragon. Instead, he sent riders to the Trident, bearing letters sealed with the mark of the three-headed dragon. Each message bore the same words: the crown protects the realm, and the realm obeys the crown. There is no river, no hill, no castle that stands apart. It was enough. The lords of the Riverlands, remembering Harrenhal's fate, bowed their heads and sent their banners to the king in fealty once more. But Aegon knew peace enforced by memory would not last forever. So he turned to something greater, a design that might bind all men, not by fear, but by law. From the citadel in Old Town came a learned man named Maester Goran, who brought with him tomes and scrolls filled with the wisdom of ages past. At Aegon's command, the maesters and septons gathered in the Red Keep to shape a single code of justice, a set of laws to govern the 7 kingdoms as one. It took years. Some argued that the North should follow its own ancient customs. Others said the faith's word was law enough. But Aegon listened to all, weighing each truth like a smith weighs his metal before striking the forge. When at last the work was done, he called it the King's Peace, the first codex of Targaryen law. It decreed that all men, highborn or low, owed loyalty to the crown, that disputes between lords must be settled before the king's hand or his appointed judges, and that no man might raise sword against another save in self-defense or war declared by royal decree. The people murmured that it was a wise law, though some said it was the wisdom of dragons, not men. But in time, the realm grew calmer. Bandits fled the roads, trade flourished, and King's Landing became a place where lords and merchants from every corner of the realm might meet beneath one banner. Still, not all were content. In Dorne, the fire of defiance still smoldered. The Dornish raided the Marcher lords of the Stormlands, striking from their deserts and retreating into the hills before Aegon's knights could catch them. The king's patience was tested, but he did not ride to war again. "Let them have their sands," he said. "The dragons have no need to conquer dust." Visenya, who ruled beside him, was less forgiving. She had grown older, sterner, her beauty hard as hammered steel. Where Rhaenys had brought laughter, Visenya brought vigilance. She trained the Kingsguard herself and often flew Vagar across the borders of Dorne, a dark shadow that kept the south uneasy. It was she who noticed the realm's weakness long before others. "The king grows old," she told Orys Baratheon one evening, her voice quiet but sharp. "And when dragons age, men begin to test their fangs." Orys, faithful as ever, bowed his head. "The king still has fire in him." "Fire burns brightest before it fades," Visenya replied. Her words proved true sooner than she wished. In the 16th year of Aegon's reign, while visiting Old Town to see the completed High Tower, the king fell ill. Fever struck him down for a fortnight, and though he recovered, he never rode Balerion again. From that time forward, he ruled from the Red Keep, leaving travel and inspection to Visenya and his trusted council. Yet even weakened, the king's will was iron. When disputes rose between the great houses, Aegon himself heard their petitions. He listened to a peasant and a lord with equal care. Once, when two stormlords quarreled over a border stream, Aegon summoned them both to King's Landing, made them swear peace, and decreed that the river belonged not to either man, but to the crown. "The waters of the realm flow for all," he said. Stories spread across Westeros of his fairness, how he had once pardoned a thief who stole to feed starving children, and hanged a knight who slew a common man in arrogance. But beneath the peace, another question began to whisper through the realm. Who would rule when Aegon was gone? For though he had sons by both his sisters, he had named no heir. Rhaenys' son, Aenys, was gentle and kind, beloved by many. Visenya's son, Maegor, was fierce and silent, a warrior from his first breath. The two princes were unlike in all ways, the fire of day and the fire of night. Visenya pressed her claim often. "Maegor is strong," she said. "The realm was won by fire and will fall to ash if ruled by a dreamer." But Aegon would not choose hastily. "Aenys is the elder," he said, "and I will not set brother against brother before the gods choose my heir." Yet in secret, the court began to divide. Lords who feared Maegor's temper whispered their loyalty to Aenys. Those who despised Aenys' softness sought favor with Visenya. The seeds of strife were sown, though no man yet saw how deep their roots would run. Aegon felt the tension growing, but could only hold it at bay. "When I am gone," he said to his hand, "let them remember not my sons, but the crown. The realm is larger than one man or one house. It must endure beyond us." In his later years, the king walked the streets of King's Landing in disguise, as he had done in his youth. He listened to the fishwives, the sailors, the smiths. Many did not know him, but they spoke freely of the Dragon King who kept the peace. He returned to the Red Keep each time with quiet satisfaction. "I built this from ashes," he once told Visenya as they stood upon the walls, watching the city lights flicker below. "It will not fall while men remember that peace was paid for in fire." When at last the old king felt his strength failing, he called his sons to his side and placed a hand upon each. "Aenys shall be my heir," he declared, though his gaze lingered long upon Maegor. "But both of you are dragons, and a dragon has 2 wings. Fly together, and you will rule the skies. Tear each other apart, and you will fall." Not long after, in his 64th year, Aegon the Conqueror breathed his last. The bells of King's Landing tolled for a full day and night, their echoes carried by the wind across rivers, mountains, and plains. From the Wall to Sunspear, the realm mourned the king who had bound them all. His body was laid to rest in the crypts beneath the Red Keep, and above him stood the skull of Balerion, black and vast, as if guarding his master for eternity. Thus ended the life of Aegon, the first Targaryen, who had crossed the sea with 3 dragons and a dream, and left behind a realm that would burn, bleed, and endure for centuries under the shadow of his crown. The reign of King Aegon the Conqueror had ended, yet his shadow stretched long over Westeros. From the smoking mountains of Dragonstone to the snowbound keeps of the north, men still spoke his name with reverence and unease. The iron throne he had forged from the swords of his enemies stood gleaming in the light of torches, cold and cruel, a symbol of both his power and the price it had demanded. Upon that throne now sat King Aenys Targaryen, the elder son of Aegon and Queen Rhaenys, born of laughter, song, and sunlight. His rule began in peace, yet peace in Westeros was a fragile thing, a surface calm beneath which the old fires still smoldered. Aenys had been raised amid dragons, yet his heart was gentle where his father's had been stern. He loved music, pageantry, and the counsel of wise men. The people found him fair, if uncertain, and the court whispered that his kindness was weakness. Beside him stood his wife, Queen Alyssa Velaryon, a beauty of the sea, and his children, Rhaena, Viserys, and Jaehaerys, bright as the dawn of a new age. Yet even as his crown was placed upon his brow, many wondered whether the Son of Fire could hold the realm his father had built in blood. At the coronation feast, Prince Maegor, Aenys's half-brother, watched in silence. His mother, Queen Visenya, stood at his side, her eyes like cold steel. Maegor was all that Aenys was not, tall, broad-shouldered, and grim of face. From childhood, he had trained with sword and spear, mastering every weapon, every art of war. Men said he bore the temper of dragons in his veins, and that the sword Blackfire, once wielded by Aegon himself, had chosen him as its true heir. Visenya saw in him the strength she feared her elder son lacked. When the lords of the realm bent the knee to Aenys, she said nothing, but her silence was like a drawn blade. The first years of Aenys's reign passed in uneasy calm. He continued his father's labors, finishing the Red Keep, strengthening the roads, and granting favor to the faith. He sought harmony, not conquest. Yet harmony among dragons is as fleeting as smoke. The faith militant, though quiet since Aegon's wrath, had never truly forgiven the Targaryens. Their septons preached that the royal house was unholy, that Aenys and Maegor both were born of incest. The small folk murmured that the god's wrath would come again, and soon. When Aenys's daughter, Princess Rhaena, was betrothed to her own brother Aegon, a match in the Valyrian fashion, the faith rose in outrage. In the streets of Old Town, mobs gathered before the septs, crying out against the sin. The High Septon himself sent word to King's Landing, commanding the king to dissolve the union. Aenys hesitated, torn between faith and blood. His counselors urged caution. Visenya urged fire. "Mercy will not save you," she warned. "Your father ruled by fear, and the realm obeyed. You would rule by love, and love is wind." But Aenys would not bend to her will. He sought to reason with the faith, sending emissaries and gold, hoping to buy peace. It was folly. The poor fellows rose again, blades hidden beneath their cloaks, and in the hills of the Reach and the Riverlands, they struck at soldiers and septons alike. The realm began to unravel. It was then that Prince Maegor, who had been serving as Hand of the King, took matters into his own hands. He mounted his dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, and flew to Old Town without leave. The sky turned to shadow as he descended upon the starry sept. The city fell silent in terror. When Maegor returned, he bore the blood of the faith upon his sword. The High Septon was dead, the sept in ruins, and the faith militant scattered, for a time. Aenys was horrified. He stripped Maegor of his office and sent him into exile. "You have brought wrath upon us," the king said, his voice trembling with grief. "My father forged a throne to unite the realm, and you would drench it in blood." Maegor's reply was cold as winter. "The throne was forged in blood," he said. "It will not be kept by prayer." He left the court that day, flying east toward Dragonstone, where his mother awaited him. Without his brother's strength, Aenys found the realm turning against him. The faith declared him cursed, the lords of the Vale and the Reach murmured rebellion, and even in the north, some spoke of withdrawing their oaths. The gentle king grew thin and pale. He walked the halls of the Red Keep in silence, clutching his crown as if it weighed too heavily. "Why do they hate me?" he asked his maesters. "I have given them peace." But the maesters had no answer. In the 6th year of his reign, the storm broke. The faith militant rose in open rebellion. They seized Septon's Hill in King's Landing, slaying the guards and raising the 7-pointed star above its walls. Across the realm, lords who feared the dragon's wrath began to falter. Aenys fled the city, seeking refuge at Dragonstone. There, in the great hall beneath the carved dragons, he found his mother waiting. Visenya had aged little, her hair silver as frost, her eyes sharp as ever. "You come to me at last," she said. "I am your king," Aenys answered weakly. "You are my son," she replied, "and you are dying." It was true. The king's health had failed. Some said it was the weight of his crown, others the poison of despair. Within days, he was bedridden. Maesters tended him, but their draughts brought no comfort. When at last he drew his final breath, Visenya stood over him, her face unreadable. "You were too gentle for this world," she murmured, "but your blood will not die with you." Before the day ended, she sent ravens across the realm, bearing one message: Maegor Targaryen is king. And so, the realm that had been forged by Aegon in fire now turned once more to flame. Maegor returned from exile upon the wings of Balerion, the black shadow of the dragon blotting out the sun above King's Landing. The city trembled. Septons hid their faces. Lords locked their gates. When the Iron Throne came into view, Maegor dismounted and entered the hall where his father's seat awaited. The courtiers knelt in fearful silence. The dragon's head carved into the wall seemed to watch as Maegor strode forward, his armor black and crimson, his sword glinting red. He ascended the dais and placed his hand upon the throne. "Now the realm shall know strength again," he said. The Iron Throne, forged from the swords of 1,000 foes, cut his palm as he gripped it. Blood trickled down the steel. Visenya smiled faintly. "The throne accepts you," she whispered. And thus began the reign of Maegor the Cruel, a name not yet spoken, but already written in the eyes of all who knelt before him. Outside, Balerion roared, and the sound rolled over the city like thunder. The Red Keep's towers trembled. The dragons on their perches cried in answer, and the 7 kingdoms, once united in peace, felt the old fear return. For fire, though dimmed, never dies. It only waits for the wind. The reign of Maegor the Targaryen, the second son of the Conqueror, began beneath a sky of fire. On the day he took the Iron Throne, King's Landing trembled, not with cheers, but with dread. The black wings of Balerion the Dread still shadowed the city, circling above the Red Keep like a storm that would never pass. From the lowest hovel to the highest tower, men whispered the same word: Maegor. He had returned from exile, carrying vengeance upon his shoulders. The faith militant held the septs of the city, claiming the gods had cast down the unworthy king, and their zealots stalked the alleys, preaching that the dragon's rule had ended. But when Maegor strode into the throne room, his face hidden behind black steel, his voice was thunder. "The gods made no crown," he said. "I am king by blood and by fire." Then he mounted Balerion and took the city back in a single night. The Battle of the Hill of Baelor, men later called it, though there was little battle at all. The zealots had fortified the Sept of Remembrance with stone and prayer, believing that the Seven would protect them. But when Balerion came, wings beating like drums of war, the air itself turned to flame. The Sept melted like wax, its 7 towers collapsing one after another into a river of molten stone. When the smoke cleared, the hill was black glass. Maegor walked upon it barefoot, the soles of his feet seared, yet he did not flinch. "The gods are silent," he said, "because they know their judgment is done." From that day, the faith bent knee or burned. His coronation followed in grim splendor. In the great hall of the Red Keep, Queen Visenya placed the crown upon her son's brow, a circle of black iron and rubies, forged from the same steel as the Iron Throne. The lords of the realm knelt in fear, not fealty. Some came because they must, others because they dared not defy. Yet among them all, one figure was absent: Prince Aegon, son of the late King Ennis, rightful heir in the eyes of many. Far to the west, Aegon had raised his standard, declaring himself the true king. The realm was divided once more, torn between blood and blood. Maegor's vengeance was swift. He led his host to Old Town, where the faith militant still clung to their power. The city barred its gates, and the High Septon, newly chosen by the surviving Septons, called upon the Seven for deliverance. For 40 days, Maegor encamped outside the walls, his banners black and red against the white of the high tower. He gave no command to attack, not yet. He waited, like a hunter before the strike. Then, on the 41st day, the gates opened. The High Septon came forth, barefoot, robed in sackcloth, and fell to his knees before the king. "The gods see your might," he said. "They have spoken in dreams. The war must end." Maegor dismounted, silent. He drew black fire, its blade dark with ancient light, and laid it across the Septon's shoulders. "Rise then," he said, "and serve." Old Town was spared. The faith militant was dissolved. The swords of the warriors' sons were taken and melted into chains, hung about the Sept's walls as a warning to all who would take up arms against the crown. Yet even as peace returned, whispers grew that Maegor's heart had turned to stone. He ruled through fear. His justice was swift, merciless, and absolute. When a lord of the Westerlands refused to send taxes, Maegor rode there himself, burned the man's hall, and nailed his charred crown to the gate. When 3 knights of the Reach were caught plotting rebellion, he had their heads impaled upon the walls of King's Landing and left their kin alive to watch. The people began to call him Maegor the Cruel. Still, his strength could not be denied. The roads ran clear of bandits. The ports were safe. Even the Dornish, who had defied 3 kings before him, sent envoys bearing peace offerings of gold and silk. But the one fire Maegor could not quench was the one that burned within his own bloodline. Prince Aegon, son of Enos, had not yielded. From his refuge in the Vale, he gathered loyalists, storm lords, river lords, and knights of the faith. And in the year of Maegor's 3rd reign, he struck. His banners bore the 3-headed dragon of Targaryen, but upon a field of gold instead of red, to mark him as the true heir. The realm trembled once more. Aegon's host marched south, and his message flew before him. A Targaryen who kills his own kin is no king at all. The small folk cheered his name, for where Maegor ruled by fire, Aegon promised peace. The 2 hosts met upon the God's Eye, not far from the blackened ruins of Harrenhal, that same fortress Aegon the Conqueror had burned years before. Maegor rode Balerion, and his nephew came on Quicksilver, a smaller, swifter dragon with silver scales bright as the morning star. The sky turned black as they rose. The battle that followed was one of legend and terror. Lightning flashed across the lake. The air itself seemed to tear apart as dragonfire met dragonfire. For an hour they circled and struck, flame upon flame, until the world beneath them was a storm of smoke and ash. In the end, Maegor triumphed. Balerion was the elder, greater, deadlier. When he fell upon Quicksilver, his jaws closed like a hammer of the gods. The younger dragon screamed once, its silver flame vanishing into the dark. Both dragons fell, crashing into the waters below. When Maegor rose from the lake, his armor melted, his face half burned, but alive, he carried Aegon's broken body in his arms. He laid it before his men. "This is the price of treason," he said. "Let none forget." From that day, no man dared challenge his rule, but the realm's heart was broken. The small folk began to vanish from the roads. The Septons whispered curses in secret, and even the lords who bowed before Maegor did so with trembling hands. The Iron Throne cut him often, more than it had ever cut his father. Some said the throne itself rejected him, that it could sense his cruelty. His mother, Visenya, was the only soul who still stood beside him. But she too was fading, her strength waning like the last glow of twilight. When she died, Maegor ordered all the bells of King's Landing silenced for a month. He kept her ashes within his chambers and spoke to them as if she still lived. The realm began to crumble in fear. The great works his father had begun stalled, the Red Keep unfinished, its secret tunnels left dark and unmarked. Rumors spread that the king had ordered dungeons beneath the castle, where enemies vanished and screams echoed through stone. Even Balerion grew restless. The dragon's wings were seen less often above the city, as if he too tired of blood. Yet in his solitude, Maegor sought one thing above all: an heir. His first wife, Cerise Hightower, gave him none, nor did his second or third. In time, he took 6 wives, each promised to bear him sons of dragon's blood. None lived. The small folk whispered that the gods had cursed him for his sins, that his line would end in shadow, and perhaps they were right. In the 12th year of his reign, Maegor the Cruel was found dead upon the Iron Throne. Some said he had slain himself, others that the throne had drunk his blood. The blades that formed its seat were wet with crimson, and his body lay impaled upon the steel, his eyes open and unseeing. Balerion roared once that night, a cry so vast and sorrowful that the walls of the Red Keep shook. The next day, the lords of the realm proclaimed Prince Jaehaerys, son of the gentle Enos, as king. The small folk rejoiced. The faith offered prayers. The dragons took to the sky once more, and the long nightmare of Maegor's reign came to its end. Yet though his throne was cold, the memory of his rule remained, a warning written in fire. For in Westeros, peace is bought with blood, and the dragons, once woken, never truly sleep. When King Maegor the Cruel was found lifeless upon the Iron Throne, the realm exhaled as though from a long and terrible fever. No one mourned him, yet none dared to rejoice openly until the black banners were lowered, and the dread roar of Balerion fell silent over the city. The dragon, masterless now, took flight over the narrow sea and vanished into the mists. Some said he went seeking Aegon the Conqueror, whose ashes lay beneath the Red Keep. Others whispered that he fled men's cruelty, for even the dread of the skies had grown weary of blood. The council that gathered in the Red Keep moved swiftly. The lords were weary of fear, and the faith, broken but still unbowed, demanded a new ruler, one who would restore both law and mercy. Thus they turned to Prince Jaehaerys Targaryen, the last living son of the gentle King Aenys, a boy of 14 summers who had fled Maegor's wrath to Dragonstone. With him was his sister-wife, Princess Alysanne, sweet of voice and wise beyond her years. When the summons came, Jaehaerys mounted his dragon, Vermithor, bronze and vast, whose wings gleamed in the dawn light. The sky was clear that morning, and as the dragon's shadow swept over the city, the people fell to their knees, not in terror, but in wonder. They had seen dragons before, but never one that carried hope upon its back. The boy king dismounted before the Iron Throne, the very seat that had claimed his uncle's life. The courtiers looked on, expecting fear. Instead, Jaehaerys ascended the steps calmly and stood before the great twisted blades of Aegon's forge. "This throne has tasted too much blood," he said, his voice steady. "Let it taste no more while I rule." And thus began the reign of Jaehaerys Targaryen, the Conciliator, whose rule would heal the wounds of the realm. His first act as king was to send word to Old Town, summoning the High Septon to parley. He offered peace to the faith, promising that the dragon and the gods need not be foes. The new High Septon, weary of fire and death, agreed. So ended the wars of the faith, which had burned for 3 kings' lifetimes. In their place came peace, such as Westeros had not known in memory. Jaehaerys was young, but wisdom had found him early. He restored the councils that Maegor had shattered and replaced fear with fairness. He walked the streets in plain garb, listening to the grievances of fishmongers and masons. When he held court, he did not sit alone. Queen Alysanne was ever at his side, her counsel softening his judgments, her smile brightening even the gray halls of the Red Keep. The lords who had hidden in their keeps during Maegor's reign came forward once more, seeking pardon. Jaehaerys gave it freely. "The realm cannot stand upon old grudges," he said. "Let us build upon forgiveness instead." Not all approved. Some of his counselors urged vengeance, but Jaehaerys silenced them with calm words. "If my rule is to be founded on fear, then I am no better than the kings who came before." Queen Alysanne, beloved by all, became known as the Good Queen. She rode her dragon, Silverwing, to the far reaches of the realm, speaking with small folk, visiting septs, and bringing the king's peace where once there had been none. Together, they rebuilt what fire had destroyed. The roads were made safe again. The docks of King's Landing swarmed with ships from distant lands, and the fields of the Reach and Riverlands bloomed once more. From Winterfell to Sunspear, men spoke the king's name with respect, and the small folk began to say that the dragon's fire had finally warmed, not burned, the world. But peace, though welcome, carries its own burdens. The realm, long held by fear, now tested its freedom. Lords quarreled over boundaries forgotten during the wars, and old rivalries stirred like snakes in the grass. In the north, Lord Alaric Stark held to his forefathers' customs and refused to kneel when the king's envoys came to Winterfell. In the Iron Islands, the Reavers once more took to the sea. To the south, Dorne still stood apart, ruled by the Martells, proud and defiant. For near 100 years they had refused the Iron Throne's claim. Jaehaerys, unlike his forebears, did not march upon them. Instead, he sent envoys bearing olive branches and oaths of peace. For 7 years, the messengers rode back and forth between Sunspear and King's Landing. Then, at last, Dorne accepted alliance, not by conquest, but by accord. When the treaty was signed, Queen Alysanne said, "The swords of men cannot bind the realm, but trust may." Her words became legend. Under their rule, the great works began. Roads and bridges spanning the realm like veins of stone and wood. The king ordered the building of the 50 Leagues Road, linking King's Landing to Old Town, and the King's Road, which stretched north to Winterfell. He reformed the taxes, strengthened the courts, and filled the realm's coffers with gold earned not from war, but from trade. Yet for all his peace, shadows still moved beneath the surface. The Iron Throne had grown sharp with time. Many blades still rusted from the blood of Maegor and his foes. One night, as Jaehaerys sat in council, a cut from the throne opened on his hand, deep and black. The maesters tended him, but the wound festered. The court murmured that the throne was alive, that it judged its kings, that only those worthy could sit upon it unscathed. But Jaehaerys, though wounded, did not yield. "If this throne cuts me," he said, "then let it. A king must bleed for his realm." His strength endured. He ruled not for years, but for decades, and in that time Westeros changed more than in all the ages before. In the north, he journeyed with Alysanne beyond the wall, where he met the Night's Watch and granted them new lands for their service. There, Queen Alysanne learned the names of the wildlings and the old ways of the forest children. From her compassion came new peace, even at the world's edge. At King's Landing, the Red Keep was completed, towers of crimson stone rising high above the city, and beneath them, the hidden chambers Maegor had ordered carved into the rock, their secrets known only to the king. The dragon pit was raised upon Rhaenys' hill, a great domed hall where the dragons of the royal line could rest and breed. Vermithor, the king's own dragon, grew vast and ancient, his wings spanning the width of the castle. Silverwing and Dreamfire, Alysanne's and Rhaena's dragons, often took to the skies together, 3 shimmering forms that gleamed above the city like living stars. But all fires fade in time. When Jaehaerys had ruled for 55 years, age crept upon him like a slow winter. His hair turned white, his steps grew heavy, yet his mind remained clear. Alysanne, his beloved queen, passed before him, and for the first time since his youth, the king wept before his court. He withdrew from the public eye, speaking seldom, walking often upon the castle walls to watch the dragons circling in the distance. "They will outlive us all," he said to his granddaughter one evening, "but they are fire, and fire is both light and death. Remember that, child." In his 83rd year, Jaehaerys the Wise took to his bed. His children gathered round him, and the realm held its breath. "Tell them," he whispered, "tell them I sought peace." Then he closed his eyes and was gone. When word spread, the bells of King's Landing tolled for 7 days. From every holdfast and hall, the people lit candles in his memory. They said no king before or after would ever match his wisdom or his mercy. Thus ended the reign of Jaehaerys the Conciliator, who had taken the throne of swords and turned it, for a time, into a seat of peace. Yet beyond the walls of the Red Keep, dragons still slept, and their dreams were long. For in the centuries to come, their fire would wake again, and the realm that Jaehaerys built in love would once more tremble beneath their wings. In the long peace that followed the passing of Jaehaerys the Conciliator, the realm seemed to slumber, lulled by memory and the weight of his wisdom. For 55 years, he had ruled as a father rules his house, and though the lords grumbled and quarreled in their halls, none dared draw sword while the old dragon lived. Yet even peace grows brittle with age. When the king at last went to his rest, leaving behind a realm of prosperity, there were those who looked upon the Iron Throne and saw not legacy, but opportunity. Jaehaerys left no clear heir. His sons and daughters, once many, had dwindled through time, plague, and misfortune. His last surviving grandson, Viserys, had long served as Lord of Dragonstone, while his younger brother Daemon held the office of Commander of the City Watch. Both were dragon lords, both strong, but of such different temper that the gods themselves might have forged them from fire and water. When the lords of the realm gathered at King's Landing for the Great Council of 101, 1,000 voices clamored for the crown. For days the hall of Harrenhal was filled with banners and noise. Men of the Reach and the North, the Vale and the Westerlands, all shouting for their claimants. At last, the debate narrowed to two: Viserys Targaryen, calm and dutiful, and Princess Rhaenys, the daughter of Jaehaerys' eldest son. The princess was strong in her right. She was dragon rider, noble, and wise. Yet the realm had never known a queen upon the Iron Throne, and the lords would not bend so far. By voice and vote, they chose Viserys, and Rhaenys became forever known as the queen who never was. When the old king's bones were laid to rest, Viserys was crowned before the realm, with his dragon Balerian skull looming above him like a black sun. He was a man of peace, much like his grandsire, and the people rejoiced. For a time, the songs returned to the streets of King's Landing, and the smell of roasting meat replaced that of fear. But peace, like glass, is beautiful only until it cracks. Viserys ruled kindly, perhaps too kindly. He loved feasts, laughter, and fine company. His court shone with color and life, yet behind the splendor shadows grew. His brother Daemon, fierce and restless, found no joy in peace. He had the blood of Maegor in him, bold, mercurial, and hungry for power. As commander of the City Watch, he turned the gold cloaks into his own loyal army and ruled the night streets as though they were his kingdom. King of Flea Bottom, the people whispered, half in jest. Viserys did not rebuke him, for he loved his brother dearly, but the lords of the court saw what the king would not. "A viper sleeps by your throne," warned Sir Otto Hightower, hand of the king. "One day it will wake." The warning went unheeded. When Queen Aemma, Viserys' first wife, died giving birth to a son who lived but a day, the king's grief was boundless. In his despair, he sought solace where he could find it, in the counsel of his hand's daughter, the young and comely Alicent Hightower. Within a year, she became his queen, and the court erupted in whispers once more. By her, the king had sons and daughters, fair and strong. Yet before them all stood Princess Rhaenyra, his firstborn, the apple of his eye. He had raised her as his heir since childhood, teaching her the duties of rule and the lore of dragons. When she came of age, he declared her his successor before the assembled lords, and each bent the knee to her, even Daemon, though his smile was thin as a blade. It was a promise meant to bind the realm, but promises are frail when weighed against ambition. As the years turned, the king grew heavier, slower, and more trusting of those around him. Alicent's kin, the Hightowers, filled the council, while Rhaenyra withdrew more often to Dragonstone. Daemon, ever restless, left court altogether, taking his dragon Caraxes across the narrow sea to wage his own wars in the Stepstones. There, he crowned himself king of the narrow sea, his banner a red dragon with claws dripping gold. Viserys wept when he heard the news. "He does this to spite me," he said. "He was born to rule beside me, not against me." But Daemon's wars brought gold and trade to the realm, and in time he returned, his crown laid at his brother's feet. "The king of the narrow sea kneels before the king of Westeros," he said, and the two embraced before the court. The singers called it the Day of Peace. Yet in the shadows of the Red Keep, the Hightowers and the supporters of Rhaenyra eyed each other with silent loathing. The air of the court grew thick with rivalry, for Queen Alicent's eldest son, Aegon, was strong, charming, and of pure Valyrian blood. A son should follow his father, the queen's supporters murmured, not a daughter. When Viserys heard of it, his temper broke. "Rhaenyra is my chosen heir," he thundered. "Let no man speak otherwise while I draw breath." But his breath would not last forever. In the twilight of his reign, the king's body failed him. He grew bloated and pale, plagued by sores that would not heal. The maesters wrapped him in linen and perfumed oils, but still the smell of death lingered in the halls. He could no longer sit the Iron Throne without help, and his crown often slipped from his brow. It was during this decline that Daemon returned once more to court, older, leaner, his smile colder. He stood beside Rhaenyra, who had married and borne sons of her own. The court divided openly now. Those who favored Rhaenyra wore her colors of red and black. Those who favored the queen's son Aegon wore green. Thus were born the blacks and the greens, though the king still lived. When at last Viserys closed his eyes for the final time, the realm lay on the edge of fire. Some say his last words were to his daughter, others that he called for his first wife, Aemma. Whatever truth may be, his death was kept secret by the queen's party until her son could be crowned. In the darkness before dawn, the bells rang in the dragon pit, and Aegon II Targaryen was anointed king. His mother placed the crown upon his head, the crown of Aegon the Conqueror himself, and the city cried his name. But across the narrow sea at Dragonstone, Princess Rhaenyra awoke to ravens bearing the news. She stood upon the cliffs, the wind in her hair, and her dragon Syrax roared behind her, the sound echoing across the black waters. "They stole my birthright," she said, her eyes bright as flame. So began the dance of the dragons, the war that would turn brother against sister, dragon against dragon, and leave the skies of Westeros dark with fire. The songs say that when dragons dance, the world trembles. And so it did. The dawn that followed King Viserys' death broke red as blood, and before its light had touched the towers of King's Landing, the struggle for the Iron Throne had begun. Queen Alicent's followers moved swiftly, cloaking the court in silence. The doors of the royal chambers were barred, the servants sworn to secrecy. For 3 days, the city knew nothing of its king's passing, while in the shadows, the great game of power was set anew. It was Sir Otto Hightower, the Hand, who took command. Calm and cold as winter stone, he gathered the council before the Iron Throne. "The king is dead," he said. "Long live the king. His son, Aegon. A murmur of unease rippled through the chamber. Lord Beesbury of the Coin protested, rising from his chair. The Princess Rhaenyra is the named heir. We swore our oaths before gods and men. But oaths are wind to those who hunger for crowns. Sir Criston Cole, Lord Commander of the King's Guard, struck the old man down where he stood. The council fell silent as his blood spread across the floor, and so the die was cast. That night, while the bells of the sept lay still, Prince Aegon was brought from his bed and clothed in black and gold. He was a youth of indolent grace, fair-haired like his mother, his eyes pale with both charm and cunning. "My sister will not yield," he said as they fastened the armor upon his shoulders. "She need not yield," Otto replied. "She need only die." By dawn, the Green Council had acted. The gates of the city were closed, the docks guarded, and riders sent to every lord and holdfast that might bend knee to the Queen's son. In the dragon pit, the dragon keepers whispered prayers as they saddled Sunfire, Aegon's golden beast. When the sun rose above the black water, its light gleamed upon his scales like molten coin. Aegon was crowned in the dragon pit before the lords and people of the city. Sir Criston set the crown of Aegon the Conqueror upon his brow, and the High Septon anointed him with 7 oils. Trumpets sounded, and the crowd cried his name. Aegon, second of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men. Far across the narrow sea, at Dragonstone, Princess Rhaenyra felt the wind turn cold. Her father's death came to her not by raven, but by rumor, carried on the breath of traders and sailors. When the truth reached her ears, she stood upon the black cliffs of her ancestral seat, her belly swollen with child, her heart a furnace of rage. "They have stolen what is mine," she said. "Let the realm be bathed in fire, if fire must cleanse it." The maesters begged her to rest, but Rhaenyra would not be still. She gathered her allies, her uncle husband, Daemon, the rogue prince, her sons Jacaerys and Lucerys, both dragon riders, and her sworn lords of the Black faction. Together they swore an oath. For every day that Aegon sat the Iron Throne, the skies would burn red with dragon flame. Yet even dragons cannot fly without wings. The realm was vast, and its loyalties uncertain. The Blacks and the Greens sent envoys to every corner of Westeros, letters sealed with fire and blood. Some lords hesitated, fearing to choose between siblings. Others saw only the promise of favor and reward. In the north, Lord Cregan Stark brooded over his choice, silent as the snow. In the Vale, Lady Jane Arryn waved her banners. The Riverlands, torn by old grudges, leaned toward the princess, while the Reach and Stormlands bent to the Queen. The realm, once whole, now split along fault lines too deep to mend. War began not with the clash of armies, but with wings. Rhaenyra's son, Lucerys Velaryon, rode his dragon Arrax to Storm's End, bearing messages of peace to Lord Boros Baratheon. But when he arrived, he found another guest had come before him, Prince Aemond Targaryen, Aegon's fierce younger brother, his eye long lost to Rhaenyra's child in a quarrel of youth. "Have you come to sue for peace or beg for mercy?" Aemond asked, his one sapphire eye gleaming. "I came as an envoy," Lucerys answered. "You would not dare strike me." Aemond smiled. "Would I not? Boros refused to take sides until the dragons did. 'No blood beneath my roof,' he said. 'Take your quarrel to the sky.' And they did. Storms raged that night as Vhagar, Aemond's ancient she-dragon, rose into the clouds, her wings vast as castles, her roars shaking the sea. Arrax was smaller, swifter, darting through the storm like lightning, but Vhagar was death itself. In the chaos of wind and rain, the elder dragon struck. Come dawn, the waves carried only wreckage and the boy's broken body. When word reached Dragonstone, Rhaenyra fell to her knees. Her scream echoed through the halls like the cry of a dying dragon. "An eye for an eye," Daemon whispered beside her. "A son for a son." So vengeance was sworn, and the dance of the dragons truly began. Daemon struck first. By night, his men crept into the royal holdfast in King's Landing. They found Prince Jaehaerys, Aegon's young son, sleeping beside his twin sister. By dawn, only one child lived. The blood of innocence had been spilled, and the gods turned their faces away. In the months that followed, the land itself seemed to bleed. The riverlands burned as dragons dueled over its fields, Vermithor and Silverwing, Sunfire and Caraxes, their flames painting the sky in hues of ruin. Towns were turned to ash, castles melted like candle wax. The songs that once filled the realm were replaced by the shrieks of beasts and men alike. At Rook's Rest, Queen Rhaenys, the queen who never was, took to the skies upon Meleys, the Red Queen, to face Aegon and Aemond both. 3 dragons clashed above the castle, their firestorms blinding the sun. When they fell together, Meleys and Sunfire crashing into the castle's heart, Vhagar vanishing into smoke. Rhaenys's bones were never found. King Aegon lived, but his flesh was burned black from crown to heel. He was carried from the field half dead, unable to walk or rule. The court whispered that his brother now ruled in all but name. Daemon and Rhaenyra pressed their advantage. They marched upon the capital, and the city, weary of blood, opened its gates. When Rhaenyra entered the Red Keep, she found the Iron Throne empty. She climbed its steps, her gown torn, her hands trembling. "Now I am my father's daughter," she said, and placed the crown upon her head. But her triumph was brief. The city that had hailed her turned quickly. Food grew scarce, gold scarcer, and the people's love soured into hate. They called her the half-year queen. When her son, Prince Joffrey, took dragon to the sky without leave and fell to his death, her grief unmade her. Beyond the walls, Aegon's loyalists gathered once more. The war was not yet done, for dragons may die, but vengeance does not. And so the fires raged on until even the skies wept ash. Brother slew sister, mother devoured son, and the dragons, those proud heirs of Valyria, perished one by one, their screams fading like thunder beyond the mountains. When at last the embers cooled, the Iron Throne stood alone amid ruin, blackened and sharp. The dance had ended, but the song it left behind would echo for centuries. It is said that from that day forth, no man or woman ever sat the Iron Throne easily, for the steel remembered. Smoke still clung to the skies above King's Landing when the last dragons fell silent. The city that had once glimmered with life now lay bruised and blackened, its towers scorched, its streets slick with soot. Men called it victory, though none could tell for whom. For in the wake of the dance, the realm had forgotten what victory even meant. Rhaenyra Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Andals and of the Flame, ruled now over ashes. Her crown sat heavy upon her brow, forged in grief. Her son, Lucerys, was dead. Her brother Aegon vanished beyond the reach of ravens. Her dragons slain or vanished into the wilderness. The Red Keep, once a fortress of majesty, stank of smoke and sorrow. When she walked the halls, the courtiers bowed low, but their eyes followed her with unease. They whispered that she had lost the favor of the gods, that the dragons' deaths were punishment for her pride. Even the small folk, who had once cheered her return, now muttered her name in fear. Hunger and plague stalked the alleys. The fishmongers spoke of corpses clogging the black water, and the taverns sang songs of a curse that hung over the queen's line. Yet Rhaenyra endured, her heart unbroken though all around her crumbled. "My father's blood runs in my veins," she said. "The Iron Throne was forged for Targaryens, not usurpers." Still, her nights were haunted. In her dreams, she saw her sons riding dragons that no longer answered her call, their wings burning as they fell from the sky. Sometimes she woke crying out for Daemon, her uncle husband, whose absence had grown into legend. Some said he had died in the battle above the God's Eye, both he and Aemond swallowed by the lake's depths. Others whispered that he lived still, cloaked in shadow, watching the realm burn from afar. Whether dead or living, he sent her no word. The war, though dying, had not ended. In the west, the Hightowers held Old Town in the name of Aegon II. In the north, Lord Cregan Stark gathered his banners, saying that a king or queen who spilt so much dragon blood must answer for it before the gods. In the Riverlands, men refused both crowns and called for peace, though none yet knew how to make it. The Iron Throne, black with soot, seemed to mock its new mistress. When Rhaenyra first sat upon it, the steel cut her hand to the bone. The maesters cleaned the wound, but it festered, and she wore her arm bound in linen. Some said the throne itself rejected her. Others whispered that all who sat it paid the same price. Then, one night, as storm winds howled through the broken windows of the Red Keep, word came: Aegon lived. He had been found in the south, burned and crippled, yet alive. His dragon Sunfire, scorched and half-wingless, had crawled to the coast and died in the dunes. The remnants of his loyal host gathered around him, bearing the green banners once more. The war that had withered to embers flared again. Rhaenyra's council urged caution. "The realm is weary," said Lord Corlys Velaryon, her sea snake, whose ships had fed the war for years. "You have the throne. Let him rot in the south." But Rhaenyra shook her head. "A usurper who breathes is a blade left unbroken." She gathered what forces remained, the remnants of her black host, those still loyal to her crown. They marched south, weary and hollow-eyed, through the smoke of their own ruin. In the skies, few dragons followed. Of all that once soared, only Syrax, her own beast, remained at her call. They met Aegon at Dragonstone, the place where all had begun. The sea boiled with thunder as her fleet approached. From the cliffs, green banners snapped in the storm. Aegon's men had seized her ancestral home, though they held it in fear more than defiance. The queen landed beneath the shadow of the mountain, her cloak soaked in rain, her eyes burning with fury. When she entered the great hall, she found Aegon waiting, pale, broken, his body ruined by flame. His crown, the conqueror's crown, lay crooked upon his head. "So the realm's butcher returns," he rasped, voice raw as sand. "And the realm's thief still clings to his stolen seat," she answered. They stared at one another across the ruin of their blood. Between them, the Iron Throne might as well have stood invisible, for it was that same cruel seat that had drawn them both to this doom. What passed then was never written in full. The masters who came after spoke of a cry, a clash of steel, and a roar that shook the mountain to its roots. Some say that Syrax tore the roof apart in her fury, her fire blinding the guards. Others claim that Aegon's blade struck true, and that Rhaenyra's scream echoed long after she fell. What is known is this: when dawn came, the fires of Dragonstone burned high, and Queen Rhaenyra was gone. Those who found the hall spoke of bones upon the floor, small, blackened, and unrecognizable. In their midst sat Aegon, his eyes hollow, his sword red to the hilt. "I am king," he murmured to no one, "but my kingdom is ash." He ruled for a moon's turn only. Wounded and raving, he was carried back to King's Landing, where poison or mercy, none can say which, ended his suffering. Thus, the War of the Dragons closed at last, leaving behind naught but ruin. When the smoke cleared, only children remained to inherit the world their elders had destroyed. The dragons were all but gone, their mighty line reduced to stunted beasts that could no longer carry men to war. The last great worms were chained in the dragon pit, where they sickened and died. Upon the ashes of Rhaenyra's reign rose her son, Aegon the Younger, frail and pale, too haunted by the sight of dragonfire to ever mount one himself. He was crowned in quiet ceremony, without trumpets, without cheers. The lords bowed, not from loyalty, but from exhaustion. The new king said little as he took his father's sword and mother's crown. "They called it the dance," he said softly, "but all I hear are screams." In his reign, men spoke no more of dragons, but of rebuilding, of roads and harvests, of bridges mended and walls raised again. The realm healed slowly, like a scar that never truly fades. The faith preached that the age of fire was ended, that the gods had turned their faces from dragonkind. The small folk agreed. To them, dragons had been monsters of sky and flame, and few lamented their passing, but not all rejoiced. In hidden chambers and ancient keeps, old men whispered of the time when dragons ruled the world and men were but their shadows. They said that dragons do not die. They sleep. That deep beneath the earth, in the molten caverns of Dragonstone, the fire of old Valyria still burned, waiting for breath to wake it once more. And so, the realm passed into silence. The Targaryens remained kings, their blood still silver, their eyes still bright with the memories of flight. Yet without dragons, their power dimmed. The Iron Throne, cruel and sharp, stood as the last reminder of what had been, a monument to the folly of fire. Those who lived through the dance grew old, and the songs turned to whispers. The names of Aegon and Rhaenyra became legend, their war a tale for children and poets. But among the Meisters there lingered a saying carved upon the last page of their chronicles. When dragons war, the sky itself weeps, and from its tears is born the next storm. Thus ended the age of flame, though its embers would smolder yet. For in Westeros, no peace endures forever, and even cold ashes can hide the promise of fire. Years slipped by like mist upon the trident, and though the fires of the dance had faded, their smoke lingered long upon the realm. Westeros lay quiet, its wounds hidden but not yet healed. The Iron Throne still ruled from King's Landing, but its glory was dimmed, its power weakened, as if the death of the dragons had stolen the strength of the very crown itself. King Aegon III, Targaryen, called the Dragonbane, reigned now over a kingdom that feared fire more than it feared war. He was but a boy when he took the throne, pale and solemn, haunted by what he had seen, his mother devoured by dragonfire, his kin turned to ash in a storm of wings. Though he was of dragon's blood, he would never mount nor ride one. His dreams were full of fire, and in every dream it burned him anew. The court was governed in truth by regents and lords who bickered over the boy's head like crows above a corpse. The hand of the king, first Sir Tyland Lannister, sought to restore the realm's coffers and bind the broken lords to peace. But gold could not mend the hearts of men. The faith still mistrusted dragon lords. The small folk cursed their ruin, and the noble houses, scarred by loss, looked more to their own walls than to the Red Keep. Aegon listened to it all in silence. He attended council, yet spoke little, his eyes distant, as though he saw ghosts at every corner. The maesters said the boy was sickly, his spirit wounded beyond cure. But those who served him closely knew there was more in his silence than sorrow. He was watching, weighing, learning. When he came of age, he dismissed the council that had ruled in his name. "The dragons are gone," he said, his voice quiet but cold. "We must rule as men, not as shadows of beasts." He turned his attention to the rebuilding of King's Landing, still marred by the dance's destruction. He ordered the dragon pit sealed, its domed roof cracked and open to the rain. The bones of the last dragons were taken from their chains and entombed in the crypts beneath the castle. "Let them sleep," the king said. "Let their fire die." The small folk, seeing the last of the dragons buried, named him Dragon Bane, and though they spoke it softly, it was not meant as mockery. They had feared the beasts too long. They prayed the dragons would never rise again. Yet the blood of Valyria is not so easily smothered. Among Aegon's kin was his half-sister, Princess Baela, fierce of heart and unbowed by sorrow. She had been a dragon rider in her youth, though her mount, Moondancer, had perished in the war. "You would bury our birthright," she told Aegon one night, when the moon hung pale above the city. "But fire cannot be buried. It waits." The king said nothing, but in secret, he ordered his masters to scour the realm for the remnants of dragon eggs. From Dragonstone, from the ruins of Harrenhal, even from the smoking crags of the Vale, they came. 6 in all, hard as stone and cold to the touch. The king kept them hidden beneath the Red Keep, where no eye but his own might see them. He had not lost his faith in dragons entirely, though he feared them too deeply to wake them. The years of his rule passed in uneasy quiet. Peace held, but it was a peace of ashes, brittle and joyless. The great lords grew fat and idle. In the Reach, House Tyrell rose once more to power. In the north, the Starks rebuilt their strength. The Ironborn turned again to raiding, and in Dorne, the Martells whispered of independence still. Yet none dared raise open rebellion. The scars of the dance were still too fresh. When Aegon at last took a wife, he chose Queen Daenerys Velaryon, a girl barely past childhood, gentle and shy. The court rejoiced, for it promised the continuation of the Targaryen line. But the king himself took no joy. His eyes remained as distant as ever, and his smile, when it came, was thin as a knife. It was said that he loved the sea more than men, that he would spend hours upon the cliffs of Dragonstone, staring out at the waves. There, perhaps, he found peace. Or perhaps he sought the ghosts that still haunted him. In his reign, the maesters began the task of preserving the histories of the conquest and the dance, that the lessons of fire might never be forgotten. From their work came the first chronicles of the Dragon Kings, penned in ink as black as the ashes of their age. "So that men may remember," wrote Archmaester Gildane, "and never again call upon dragons for dominion." And yet, even in those years of quiet, strange tales arose. Sailors spoke of lights upon the sea, vast wings rising from the waves near Dragonstone, glowing faintly in the night. Shepherds near Crackclaw Point told of the earth trembling beneath their feet, as if something stirred below. The king forbade any man to seek these omens. "Let what sleeps beneath remain there," he said. But in his private chambers, he kept a single egg upon his table, wrapped in black silk. He would sit before it for hours, his hand upon the shell, his face unreadable. He died young, as if the weight of memory had finally crushed him. The realm mourned quietly, for though Aegon III had not been loved, he had brought them peace. His son, Daemon II, was crowned in his stead, a boy bright of spirit, eager to prove himself. In Daemon's reign, the songs returned, and with them, the old hungers. The tales of the conqueror stirred the hearts of men once more. Why should the blood of Valyria live without flame? They asked. Are we not dragons still? The maesters counseled caution, the septons warned of divine wrath, but ambition is the oldest of sins. The new king turned to the vaults beneath the Red Keep, where the last eggs of the dragons lay entombed. Let them wake, he said. Let my reign be the dawn of fire reborn. The eggs were placed in braziers, heated with oils and wildfire. For 7 days and 7 nights, the fires burned. On the 8th night, the castle trembled, and a sound like thunder rolled through its halls. When the smoke cleared, 1 egg had cracked, not to hatch, but to crumble into dust. The others lay still. Daemon wept with rage. He had sought to revive glory, but found only ruin. The maesters urged him to abandon the attempt, yet he would not. If dragons cannot be born, we will breed them anew, he vowed. And so he sent his alchemists to the ends of the earth, seeking the secrets of Valyria. But what was lost cannot so easily be reclaimed. Years passed, and the eggs remained cold. Men began to say the dragons were gone forever. Still, the dream of fire endured. The Targaryens were a house of memory, and memory is its own kind of flame. When King Daemon died childless, the throne passed to his cousin Baelor, the blessed king, a man of prayer rather than fire. Under his pious hand, the last whispers of the old magic faded. The Red Keep filled with septons instead of dragon riders, and the faith rose higher than the flame. Yet somewhere, beneath stone and time, the embers slept, and those who knew the blood of dragons understood that fire cannot die. It waits, patient, silent, eternal. For though the age of dragons had ended, the world itself still dreamed of wings. In the years to come, long after the songs of the dance were forgotten, when men thought the skies forever empty, that dream would stir again. And when it did, Westeros would remember once more what it meant to kneel beneath shadow and flame. For dragons, like kingdoms, never perish. They only sleep until the world is foolish enough to wake them. When the blessed King Baelor knelt before the great sept and sealed his reign with prayer, many believed the age of dragons was ended forever. His crown was of crystal, not iron, and he dreamed not of conquest, but of salvation. He filled the Red Keep with holy men, tore down the feasting halls, and walked barefoot through the streets to feed the hungry. Yet even a king who turns his face from fire cannot banish its shadow. The blood of Valyria burned in him still, restless as ever. Baelor ruled as though the Seven themselves had placed him upon the throne. He fasted until his flesh clung to bone, forbade the songs of lust and war, and shut his sisters within the maiden vault, lest their beauty tempt the realm to sin. The small folk called him saint, the lords called him mad, and in truth, he was both. For peace, he sent gifts to Dorne and freed 1,000 prisoners, even those who had plotted against him. The High Septon blessed his name from every pulpit, yet famine crept through the countryside as crops failed and granaries emptied. Holiness could not fill an empty belly. In the 9th year of his reign, Baelor walked the road from King's Landing to the capital's walls barefoot, praying with every step. The stones burned his feet, but he smiled through the pain, believing suffering would please the gods. On that road he met the small folk, who knelt and begged for miracles. Some claimed blossoms sprang up where his blood touched the ground. Others swore that crows circled above him. black halos in the sun. The maesters recorded neither, only that the king's health failed soon after. While Baelor prayed, the realm was ruled by his uncle, Prince Viserys, a man more practical than pious. Viserys saw the realm weakening beneath holy zeal. He reopened the treasuries, rebuilt the city watch, and sought to restore the king's peace. When Baelor at last collapsed from hunger and died upon the marble floor of the Sept, Viserys took the throne with tears and relief alike. He ruled with sense, if not with sanctity, and the realm exhaled. Yet beneath that calm, the old unease endured. The dragons were gone, the crown light as tin, and the faith stronger than any sword. The Targaryens still held the Iron Throne, but their fire had dimmed. Their children were pale, their eyes less fierce. Some whispered that the line was thinning, that the gods themselves punished them for the sins of incest and flame. Viserys II governed wisely and left behind sons aplenty. After him came Aegon IV, called the Unworthy, whose appetites drowned the virtue his grandsire had nursed. He filled the court with wine, whores, and flatterers, and fathered bastards faster than he could name them. The lords grumbled but endured, for the realm prospered under trade and harvest. Yet Aegon's lust proved more perilous than war. In his spite, he legitimized all his bastards upon his deathbed, casting a dozen hungry wolves among his lawful heirs. From that folly were born the Blackfyre rebellions, when brother rose against brother, and the blood of dragons once more drenched the soil. Through those wars, the throne endured, cracked, blood-stained, but unbroken. The Maesters wrote that each rebellion burned away another fragment of the old Valyrian pride, leaving the Targaryens more mortal with every passing age. Yet still their sigil flew above King's Landing, 3 heads upon a field of fire, a memory of power, if not its reality. Generations turned. Kings came and went, some wise, some cruel, all haunted by the ghosts of dragons. They ruled men, not fire, and their realm shrank within its borders while the free cities grew rich across the narrow sea. The great castles that had once trembled at the shadow of Balerion's wings grew defiant again, and the Iron Throne became less a symbol of fear than of debt and weariness. Still, in the depths of Dragonstone, the old heat lingered. Fishermen told of steam rising from the cracks of the mountain, of red light pulsing within the caverns. A few spoke of shapes glimpsed through smoke, wings vast as ships, eyes like molten gold. None dared sail close. The fire sleeps, they said, but it breathes. So it went until the birth of Aerys II, last of the line to bear the true dragon's madness. Under his rule, the realm, long drowsing, woke once more to fire. Wildfire in the streets, dragon dreams in the mind of a king who had never seen a dragon's shadow. The Maesters who chronicled his reign called it tragic. The singers called it doom reborn. For Aerys believed he could be as Aegon once was, that if he burned enough of the world, the dragons would rise again. He was wrong. His flames consumed only men. When the smoke of his madness cleared, the Targaryen banners lay torn upon the Red Keep's walls. A new dynasty rose in their place, forged not of fire, but of iron and rebellion. The last of the dragons were said to be gone forever. The eggs that survived turned to stone, cold relics of an age no man would see again. And yet the world turned, as it always had. In the east, traders carried tales of strange lights over the smoking ruins of Valyria. Sailors swore they heard the beating of wings in the storms that guard that cursed shore. The wise scoffed, but the old and the poor crossed themselves and whispered that fire never dies, it only waits for breath. Thus the tale of the dragons passed into legend. From Aegon, the conqueror's landing, to the fall of his house spanned nearly 300 years, an age of glory, madness, and flame. The maesters ended their chronicles with weary quills, writing that dragons were a lesson the gods had given mankind, that power unbridled will devour its masters as surely as it consumes its foes. But elsewhere, in the dark corners of the world, others wrote a different ending. They told of dreams yet unfulfilled, of a song of ice and fire yet to be sung. And if, in some lonely night, a traveler looked to the heavens and thought he saw the flicker of red wings across the moon, who would dare say he dreamed? For the story of the Targaryens was never truly a tale of kings and crowns. It was the story of fire itself, how it was born, how it blazed, and how it waits still, sleeping beneath stone, whispering to those of the blood who will one day wake it again. When that day comes, the world will remember Aegon's dream, the promise that bound the first conqueror to his dragons. Fire is the breath of fate. So long as it smolders, men will seek to master it, and the world will burn anew.